Hi and welcome to Text Files in Java. Let's jump right into it. I'd like to welcome you as always. Thank you for being here. My promise as always is to take you on a journey. In this case, it's going to be text files in Java like you've never seen them before. I think it'll be fascinating and amazing, and you'll learn some new and valuable skills. So with that, let's get right into it. What is a text file? Well, to answer that question, let's create one. So I'll create one using the Linux command line, and if I say echo 123 and send that output, that is with the greater than sign, send the output into myfile, that creates a text file. In fact, I can do an ls on myfile. I can do an ls-l on myfile. Notice I have a file size of 4 bytes, so I know I've got 4 bytes, and in fact the 4 bytes that went in there are the 123, but in addition the echo command puts a new line on the end. So, and we can actually see that by using hex dump with the -C option. It shows the values in the file as hex numbers, as hexadecimal. And we see we've got hex 31, 32, 33, and 0A, the 0A being the \n. Notice also if we say file, myfile, it says that we have ASCII text. Now, we've looked at the Linux file attributes previously in another video, but here they are for your review, where we have these different file attributes. Now, let's do the same thing. Instead of writing to the file using the command line, let's do it using Java code. So we know that in the command line, if I do echo 123 and send the output to my file, well, how can we do a similar thing in Java? How can I say Java main and send the output to the file? Well, it turns out you have built into the system when you start up, you have something called System.out, System.in, and System.err. And in this case, notice what we're doing at line number 4. When I say System.out, I do the print, basically telling it to do its string output. And we see that System.out is actually a java.io.print stream. A print stream, and that's key for us because we're going to be using a print stream here to write to text files in a moment. Also notice the one at the bottom, the System.err, on line number 6. When I say print that out, the System.err is a java.io.print stream. So both your output and your error are print streams, and keep that in mind because the methods we call on that we can use also to go to text files. Also, although we won't be using it here, notice there's the System.in, the java.io buffered input stream, which allows you to get buffered input. So how do we redirect standard output? If we want to redirect that standard out to a file, notice if I say Java main, so I'm running this program, Java main, and it prints out what we saw there in the previous screen. If I want to redirect that, I say Java main with the greater than sign, and here I say out.log. And what you should observe is when I do that greater than sign to redirect the output, what you see on the screen now is only the System.err java.io print stream. So notice you do not see System.out, nor do you see System.in. You only see System.err. And in fact, if I do a cat the out.log, we see that what's inside the log file is of course the title, the Java files as data structures, and the System.out and the System.in. The key observation you should be making here is that by default, when you redirect the output, your error messages, that is things sent to System.err, are not redirected. Instead, they come straight to the screen as we see here, System.err. Of course, suppose you want to redirect System.err. Turns out you can do that from the command line there in the middle. Notice where I say Java main with the number 2. The number 2 actually represents standard error. And so if I say 2 greater than to error.log, notice what comes to the screen in this case to the console is Java files as data structures, the System.out, the System.in. Those appear on the console. What goes into the log file is actually the error information. And in fact, at the bottom, when I say cat error.log, we see System.err, and that was what was redirected. So in the previous slide, we saw how to redirect standard output. In this slide, we're seeing how to redirect standard error. Of course, it turns out you can redirect both at the same time. So notice here in the middle, I say Java main, and I do my greater than sign, which we now know that's going to send all of the standard out to, in this case, all.log. On the other hand, I also have a 2 greater than ampersand 1. And so what that is saying is that take anything that's coming out of standard error, actually send it to the same place we're sending standard out. And so what this results in is a pretty clever technique. You can redirect both your standard output and your standard error. All of that is going, in this case, to the all.log file. And in fact, we see on the console, nothing appears on the screen from the console. It all goes into this cat. When I cat it out, I see all.log. It's all inside that file. Now, it turns out we can also redirect standard in to read from a file. So in this case, notice at line number 8, I'm saying while standard.in available. In other words, as long as there's something coming in from standard.in, then what I will do at line number 9 is say System.in.read, and I just read whatever that data is. I don't care what it is in this case, other than at line number 10, I am printing it out as hex values so we can see what's coming in. And we just keep doing that until we run out of input. And then at line 12, we just do a new line character by itself. So check this out. There in the middle of the screen, if I say echo hello and send that into myfile.txt, we know that inside that file we have HELLO with a new line character. And so if I say Java main with the less than sign and myfile.txt, what this is telling the system is now standard input should be coming from this file. And in fact, notice we print out, just like we did previously, we print out the standard output, the standard error. But check this out, in hex we see hex 68, hex 65, hex 6C, 6C, 6F, and 0XA, which of course is our new line character. So that was hello, and we actually pulled it in from the input from this file. So this is a super important point, knowing that you can actually read from files input from your Java program simply by looking at System.in and using this redirect. And of course, previously we saw you can also redirect your standard output and your standard error. So think about that a moment, redirecting standard in, standard out, and standard error. Now next, there comes times where you actually want to write to text files. Not redirect, but you actually want to access the text file and write to it. So why you'd want to do this is humans, right? You and me can read text files as something in human readable format. It turns out from a programming perspective, doing human readable I/O is often slower than binary I/O, writing to binary files, and so later in the course we'll also look at binary files as well. Also, when you're dealing with text files, you need to consider the character codings. That is, will you be using UTF-8, which is Unicode text format using an 8-bit character set, or will you be using UTF-16, which is Unicode text format with 16 bits. So let's do an example. Let's look a little closer at doing text file output. So here, the key class we're going to use is PrintWriter. So this java.io.PrintWriter. And this prints formatted output as a text stream. And so we can basically create a instance of a PrintWriter, and when we give it a file so it can create that, we can do things like print and print all kinds of different things, and of course it will appear in text format. So to do this, what we'll do is use our PrintWriter. We'll create a new PrintWriter, give it the name of the file, and give it the character coding we want to use, for example UTF-8, UTF-8. And then we can use our various print statements that we're already familiar with, like print and print line and printf. All right, so here's us a code sample. This adds to the code sample we already started. And remember, as you're watching this, The idea is that you're following along and creating your code and running it as well. So here at line 14, I have a java.io.PrintWriter, and notice I create an instance of that, and the file is going to be myfile.text, and it's going to be UTF-8, UTF-8, that is using the 8-bit character set. All I'll do in this one is do a print line of hello, and then I'm careful to close it. Notice by closing it, everything gets written out to the file. After I run that, notice on my console, when I cat out myfile.text, I indeed see the hello, the HELLO that we wrote out, and also if I do a hex dump with a -C, I can actually see not only the hexadecimal characters of HELLO, but I see that hidden new line that is the \0a. Well, let's do it a little more. Let's have a class called student, and for simplicity, just to save some time, notice for this class student, starting at line 2 through 8, I made all my member variables as public. Typically, we know we like to make them private so you cannot access them directly, but here I wanted to make them public just to save some time. And then at line number 10, I have a constructor where we have our student, and of course we give the values, the first, the last, the ID, the class, the average, the audit, and the time that accessed. And notice all we do with the constructor is store those values as we show there, lines 12 through 18. So to actually show using this here with our PrintWriter, notice at line 22 I create a new student. So in this case I create a John Doe student. John Doe has the ID of 123. The character of F means a freshman. The 95.4 is the average. False for audit. And then we have the time of day is actually java.time_instant.now. So that's our student. And then we at 24, we create a new file with our PrintWriter called another file.text. So that file gets created, and we use our PrintWriter using a printf at line 25. And notice I'm using the formatting, the %s for a string, a %d for a decimal or an integer, a %c for a character, a %f for floating point, %b for binary, and then a %s again for string. And you see that indeed I print that out using the PrintWriter at line 25, and at line 26 I do a close on it. To prove that that works, we run our code. Notice the console. I first do a javac to compile it, then I do a java main to run it, and to prove that I wrote to the file, I do a cat on another -file.text, and sure enough, you see what we just wrote using the PrintWriter indeed appears on that file. Okay, so you know how to write text files. Let's now see how we can read them. That is, how can we do input on these text files? So here we're going to use the Java util.scanner. This is a class that we can use to process this text. And we say java.io.file to create us a new file. Why? Because for the file, we need to give that to the scanner. So this Java util.scanner wants to see a file that's in the format of java.io.file. Once we've done that, we can hang in a while loop and say while has next. That is, while we have more tokens, they call them tokens, to process, we can continue to do that. So here we go. We're going to, at line 28, we'll create our file. This is that another -file.text that we wrote in the previous demonstration. And here at line 29, we create our scanner. So notice we've got a Java util.scanner, giving it the name of our file. Once we've done that, at line 30, we just say while in, so our scanner has the variable in, we say in has next. So as long as it has another token, what will we do? Well, at line 31, we'll print that out. We print it out by doing in.next. So in.next gets the next value. The values are separated by token. The values are called tokens, so basically we're getting the next token. And by default, the tokens are basically the delimiter is a space, and so it basically is going past the spaces and getting the next item. And you can tell by the output there at the bottom, we get John Doe 123 F 95.4 false, and we get the date and the time. Of course, at line 33, we do a close on that, saying we're done with that file. Now, to give another demonstration of doing this, here at line 35, we're going to create the scanner again. So remember, we just read from it, but we closed it, so now we're going to open it up again. So we'll say Java util scanner. And this time, instead of doing in a while loop, we'll just read one item at a time. So notice at 36, I do an n.next to get the next token, which is first, then an n.next at 37 to get the token last. Then at 38, I get the n.nextInt to get the next integer. At 39, notice I get a string. I have to do an nnext, get the string. However, I don't want the string. I want that character because I know it's going to be an F if it's a freshman or S for sophomore. So I do the char at index 0, and at line 39, that's going to give me the character. Then at line 40, I do a next double to get the average. Then at line 41, the next Boolean to get whether the student is auditing the course or not. And then finally, the one that we have to do a little more work, but not much more. On line 42, notice we go to java.time_instant.parse, and what we parse is n.next. So n.next returns the next token, which in this case would be that date and time string. We parse it using the java.time.instant, and then we of course have the accessed. To prove to ourselves that all this works, at line 44, we create a student, sending those values that we just parsed into the student. And probably even more importantly, at line 45, notice we do a printf, and we show using our same formatting, we show that we've read in from the file, and we're printing it on our Standard.out to confirm that we read in what we believe we read in. And you can see from the console output at the bottom, indeed we read in the John Doe information. So in summary, you've seen using System.out, the System.in, the System.err. You've seen that you can write text files using the PrintWriter, a great way to just print out text files, which are used a good bit. And then reading them in is just as easy using the text file input using the java.util.scanner. As always, practice writing this code and make sure you have the skills for working with text files. You'll use them a good bit as you're working with data structures. A lot of times your data will either be written out as text files or it will be read in as text files. I'm Norman McIntyre. Thanks as always for watching.